We read that this part last week, the very first introduction of Chapter 15, writing in psychographic mediums. And we're going to today start a discussion of some specific type of mediumship. Mechanical mediums, intuitive mediums, semi-mechanical mediums, inspired, and prescient mediums. Since it's been a month over a month and already, let me just read this very introduction because I think it's will facilitate our understanding of what follows it. So, Ryder, you're good to read?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so let's do it.
Okay. We start at 178, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Of all the forms of communication, manual writing is the simplest, the most convenient, and especially the most complete. All efforts should be made to develop it, for it enables relationships to be established with spirits that are as lasting and regular as those we maintain among ourselves. We stress its use so highly because it is the method through which spirits best reveal their nature and the degree of their elevation or lowliness. Through the ease with which they can express themselves in this way, they provide us with knowledge of their inmost thoughts, enabling us to evaluate them and determine their true worth. Moreover, for the medium, this faculty is the most susceptible of being developed with practice.
Thanks. So Kardec placed over here that psychograph or writing mediums, the ability of a medium, of course, a more ostensive medium, to receive the thoughts of the spirit and put that thought in a piece of paper in writing. Okay? And Kardec tells us that this is the most complete of the means of mediumship. And it says that it's so high, we stress it because it's so highly because it is the method through which the spirits best reveals their nature and the degree of the elevation loneliness. The psychography is what provides the spirits the best room to express him or herself. Although spirit has no gender, of course, once we discarnate, we maintain our identity, and that's why I say him, his or her, right? And it's also kind of limits a little bit the interference of the medium's own thoughts. In the psychography, since things happens in a more quickly manner, you receive the thought and you say out loud immediately. Perhaps there is more room for a little bit of interference of the spirit of the medium's own thoughts, of the medium's own prejudices. There will always be a degree of the medium in every communication, being it written, writing, or anything else. We all bring our own prejudices, our own atavisms, our own likes and dislikes, and the best developed mediums will interfere less. The less developed, the less prepared mediums will interfere more, but everyone will have a certain degree, even if in the choices of words that you put it down on the paper in accordance to your individual lexicon, the extension of the words that you know and the facility to which one can write, and the one has more difficulties in writing, the one has more difficulties in receiving the thought of the spirit and attaching the best possible word to write. to better express their thought. All those things will have a degree of participation of the medium in every communication. Kardec tells us that we are all mediums, and you're going to see that soon here, why he says that when we get there. Before we jump into the mechanical mediums, let's have a review that we've seen those things already of what the mediumship, especially psychography and psychophony equally, entails true. For one thing, every mediumship requires a degree of trance of the medium. And by trance, we're going to define it, even if the dictionary says differently, but for us here, say an altered state of consciousness. And usually when you say an altered state of consciousness, something will think of an individual being completely, let's say, outside of the physical environment or being coma or being in a deep state of meditation and those kind of things. But think of this altered state of consciousness having a very ample degree of intensity. Okay? It may be so minimal that it's almost unperceivable, if not unperceivable, even to the medium him or herself. And we're going to see that again when we're talking about of inspired mediums, that it might be such a minimal state of the state of trance, the intensity, that it perhaps unperceivable for us. But if we think about it, there has to be that minimal separation of the perispirit from the physical body that allows that integration of the two perispirits. Minimum necessary. Okay, so and we're talking here specific of psychography, that the medium will receive a thought that does not belong to that medium, him or herself, and will put the thought into words. There has to be a state of concentration or a state of trance that allows that to happen. It may be, again, with a very low degree of intensity that is not even perceivable. Okay? Or maybe extremely deep as well. Okay? It varies tremendously. My point is, doesn't have to be that kind of trance that someone is in La La Land, right? And why psychography is the preferred method. One, because again, as I said, it allows for less interference. It gives more room to the spirit for the spirit to express his thought. But equally, if not more important, it stays. The thoughts of the spirit now stay printed on a piece of paper. And why is it important? Because from that I can write whole books. No, see Chico Xavier, Divaldo Pereira Franco. But for us over here, we can go over it and analyze and have a pretty good ability to give a value or no value to that message. As after you read this over and over again, you'll be able to pretty much identify the moral qualities and even intellectual qualities of the medium of the spirit through those messages when it's written. When it's spoken, I mean, today we have use of recorders and okay, but when it's written, it gives us that room to print those messages, evaluate, qualify, and by qualifying the message, we can indirectly qualify also the messenger, the spirit who provide that message. So psychography is extremely um, important, and it's the basis, of course, of the whole doctrine, right? You know, all the books is a product is a product of psychography, or great part of it. Now let's talk about of what happens during a psychography, so things will make more sense when you read mechanical versus intuitive, or conscious versus unconscious medium. So there is that the mirror goes into that state of trance. In that state of trance, the perispirit kind of create a degree of separation of the perispirit. It amplifies itself, so to say, in which it is able to receive the approximation of another perispirit. That another perispirit in usual be a discarnate spirit. Could it be an incarnate spirit? Yes, it could. But here we're talking about almost 100% here of the medium being an incarnate, right? Having a soul. And the medium is this triple alliance, if you want to say. It's the eternal spirit itself, the perispirit, a spiritual body, and the physical body. Those three things are together, not one inside of the other, but in association one with the other, right? And the perispirit is the instrument that the spirits use to connect itself to the physical body. I mean, everybody knows that. It just kind of remind everybody of that. During this trance, there is this expansion of the perispirit beyond that separates a little bit of the physical body that allows the approximation of another perispirit. And during that approximation, that integration, there is that exchange of energies, and this energy you're gonna call thought. So the spirit usually be spirit. The spirit in the spiritual world also has a perispirit, right? We are going to have a perispirit in all of our stages, right? So when physical body dies, we go back to the spiritual world. We bring our perispirit with us, right? And it isn't that approximation of the two perispirits that the medium will receive the thoughts of the spirit and will be able to express the thought, put that thought in a way that is we non-mediums will be able to receive this also by writing those thoughts, transforming those thoughts in letters on a piece of paper, or by speaking those thoughts, transform those thoughts into sounds. Right now, I am transforming my thoughts into sounds, right? Into words. And that's how communication happens. And what I'm saying here, because when I'm going to read now, I got a mechanical meters and mechanical meters, you have to have that understanding that the deepest it is the expansion of the perispirit, the far out that perispirit is, the less direct connection it will have with the physical body, although always very much connected, please, all right? We don't know that. but it allows the medium to write or speak words without using its own intellect, without using its own gray matter thinking of it. Okay? Or it could be also that the medium will receive those thoughts, will pass through its own intellect, will pass through its own gray matter, will think of it, and then will write it, or will speak it. Here we're talking about psychography, always being about writing. And that's important that you understand that mechanism of psychography to be able to differentiate the different types of mediums. Mechanical, that we also can call of conscious. Personally, I'm sorry, unconscious. We use the word an unconscious medium from an intuitive or conscious medium. Okay, what is the difference between them? Okay, is there any question there? Good. So we can start with 179.
Yes. Mechanical mediums. 179. If we examine certain effects that manifest in the movements of a table, a basket, or planchette that writes, we will have no doubt that a spirit is exerting a direct action upon these objects. The basket sometimes moves about so violently that it jumps from the medium's hands. At other times, it will move towards certain individuals in the circle in order to strike them. At other times, its movements display affection. The same occurs when a pencil is placed in the medium's hand. Often, it will fly out of the hand, or the hand or basket may move convulsively and angrily tap the tabletop. All this while the medium is perfectly calm, but surprised at not being able to control the movements. We would state in passing that such effects always denote the presence of less evolved spirits. High order spirits are always calm and full of dignity and benevolence. If they are not listened to with proper respect, they withdraw and others take their place. Thus, a spirit can express its thought directly, whether by moving an object for which the medium's hand only acts as support, or by acting directly upon the hand. When a spirit acts directly upon the medium's hand, it impels it completely independently of the medium's will. The hand writes without stopping and despite the medium's will for as long as the spirit has something to say, it will then stop when it has finished. What characterizes the phenomenon in this instant is that the medium is completely unaware of what he or she is writing. This absolute unawareness characterizes those whom we call passive or mechanical mediums. This faculty is all the more valuable since it does not leave the slightest doubt about the independent thought of the entity during the writing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the medium goes into a state of trance, of altered state of consciousness. And for good practice, let's assume that is in a mediumship meetings, okay? And the environment's prepared for it. The medium is comfortable with this. Well, of course, we will have a prayer to help us to elevate um, our thoughts, our minds, that will make us the propitious environment for this event to take place. Now the spirit, now I'm sorry, the medium is in that state of trance in which there is a little separation or expansion with the perispirit, and with the objective of receiving the approximation of another perispirit. And that perispirit will be of the discarnate spirit. So a spirit living in the spiritual world approximates to the perispirit of the medium that is in a state of trance, and communication happens via thought. We need to dress that thought so among stars incarnate, you can receive those thoughts, right? In my case again here, I'm transforming my thoughts into sounds. I'm addressing my thoughts with words and throwing them out using sound, and the sound is traveling through its sound waves through air, and it's reaching a microphone, and this microphone it's reaching you guys there. During this state of trance, all that is needed now is thought. And although we find it very hard to understand the concept of thought not being words, not having words, it's pretty much impossible for us, or at least for myself, to think of it. But thought is energy, and this thought is passed from one perispirit to another. Now, when I think what I'm going to say, what I'm saying right now, it's I, spirit, who think, right? The brain does not think. But in order to transform those thoughts in something that you guys can receive, I have to make use of my physical body. I have to make use of primarily my brain, right? That will pick up that energy, those thoughts, right? In my gray matter, you transform into words in accordance with my ability to transform it into words, right? In accordance to my ability to transform that energy thought into words. Now, that's not enough even. The gray matter does its job, but it needs something else. So there is a whole biochemical electrical system that will, through a series of synapses, take those thoughts, gonna throw it in association with a complex mechanism in the gray matter that you send it through part of the brain that is specialized in speech, and that part of the brain specialized in speech gonna have to send it to the part of my physical body that is able to speak, right? The phonation system over here, my vocal cords and everything else, transform it into words. So you can say there is a complex system to transform what the spirit thinks into something that everyone can receive in writing or in words. If it's in writing, the same thing is going to happen. I'm gonna have to receive I, the spirit, think. This thought is received by the gray matter. The gray matter will send those thoughts to the part of the cortex of the brain that deals with writing, and then there is a very complex, again, biochemical electrical system that will activate the part of the brain that will activate my hands, my fingers, to pick up a pencil and write those words. So again, it's a complex thing, right? You think that I think the brain will deliver those thoughts to my hands, and my hands will do the mechanical movement following the commands of my brain, right? And that's obvious. Somebody has a stroke that affects the right side, they cannot write, but they can think. But there is a blockage in that complex system that the thought cannot reach the the hands to write anymore, right? Now, in mediumship, the same thing happens. The difference now is that those thoughts are not mine anymore. The thoughts now is from another spirit. And that spirit will approximate to my perispirit, will pass that thought to my perispirit. My perispirit will now working in a way of passing those thoughts to a piece of paper. In the case of the mechanical medium, the process bypass the intellectual part of the brain, the part of the gray matter of the brain that does the interpretation, the analysis of the thoughts. It goes straight to the part of the brain that deals with writing. And that's why the medium is completely unaware of what he, he or she is writing. This absolute awareness characterizes those whom we call passive or mechanical mediums. They receive the thoughts, but the thoughts, instead of going that way, that usually goes from the part of the intellectual part of the brain that analyzes, thinks, interprets, and then delivers to the part of the brain that commands the hands to write, it will cut off the middleman, so to say. We're going to go from the perispirit straight, because the perispirit is the one that receives the thoughts from the other spirit, right? It's straight to the part of the brain that commands the hands to write. And the spirit will, and the medium will be able to write, not knowing what he or she is is writing, because it's not going to the cognitive part of the brain that analyzes, interprets those thoughts. It's a little bit complex, but you guys understand that? Any questions here? Is that clear, or so confusing not even questions is possible?
I just have a comment on my personal experience, right? Because I can write too, like psychology. I just have it's interesting for me, and when I do psychography, it just becomes an in the moment like understanding of the word. If I'm writing something, I don't know what I'm writing beforehand, but I think it's clear that the thoughts are being processed on the brain because a millisecond before the word comes out, I know what's going to come out, right? Because I think there's this communication where it's still an organic process, where even though I don't know what the message is going to be, at the moment of writing, right? Again, this millisecond before the word comes out, I'll know the word. But it's an interesting process because it just clears to me that there's an organic process happening because I'm still aware of what's coming out, just wait, like very at the moment of writing, which is interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So there is various degrees of this mechanical movement also, right? That we more mechanical, less mechanical, and so much so there is what Kardec called the semi-mechanical that we're
Mhm.
going to read soon over here. And that the spirit is pretty sure of that he or she is writing, but it's in a nebulous kind of way. So, but it's absolutely conscious of the act that he or she is writing and may have a vague idea of what is being written, but can really say it with clarity, which is a great number of mediums have that ability. But again, to everything there is a variation, a degree from medium to medium, right? Not everyone will be the same. And even the same medium may have a degree of variation from one communication to another, depending on the affinity that he or she may have with that spirit, of the topic of the message, or those things may be variables, right? Because we're dealing here with human beings, with spirits, and being with variety of thoughts. So there is always going to be some variables. is not going to be exactly the same as an exact science.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do the intuitive immediate, and then we will try to make a comparison between the two of them.
Okay. Intuitive mediums, 180. The transmission of a spirit's thought may also occur by means of the medium's own spirit, or rather, his or her soul, since we use that term for the spirit while incarnate. In this case, communicating spirit does not act directly upon the hand in order to make it right, for it neither holds it nor guides it, but acts upon the soul with which it identifies itself. Then, under this impulsion, the medium's soul guides the hand, which in turn guides the spirit, the pencil. Here we must note an important fact. The communicating spirit does not replace the medium's soul, because it could not dislodge it from the body. Rather, it dominates it apart from the medium's will and impresses its own will on it. Consequently, the soul's role is not completely passive. It receives the spirit's thought and transmits it. In this situation, the medium is conscious of what is being written, although it is not a reflection of his or her own thought. This type of person is called an intuitive medium. One might say that there is nothing in this method that proves that it is another spirit instead of the medium's own spirit who does the writing. In fact, the distinction is sometimes quite difficult to make, but this may not be important in that one can recognize the spirit suggested thoughts by the fact that the medium has never had such him or herself. They are suggested while they are being written down and often are even contrary to the ideas that the medium previously had regarding the subject. Moreover, they may be well beyond the knowledge and capabilities of the medium. The role of the mechanical mediums is that of a machine, whereas intuitive mediums act as interpreters. In order to transmit thoughts, the latter must comprehend them and, in a sense, assimilate them in order to faithfully translate them. But the thoughts are not their own. They do nothing more than pass through their brain. This is precisely the role of an intuitive mediums.
Okay, thank you. So just as a note over here, in Spiritism, the word soul refers to an incarnated spirit. Okay, just a note Kardec puts over here. The transmission of spirit thought may also occur by means of the medium's own spirit, or rather, his or her soul, since we use the terms for the spirit while incarnate. Just a reminder that I think is good for us. It's very important to remember something here. A medium is always responsible for the communication. A well-developed, educated medium should be able to be in absolutely controlled communication, even being a completely unconscious medium, even if being what Kardec calls a mechanical mediums, right? Medium. And that's very important. Kardec puts the note over here. Here we must note an important fact. The communicate spirit does not replace the medium soul. That cannot happen because it could not dislodge it from the body. Rather, it dominates it apart from the medium's will and impresses its own will on it. Consequently, the soul's role is not completely passive. It receives the spirit's thoughts and transmits it. This is very important note for us that I should have said in the beginning. A medium in the deepest state of trance, at the farthest possible expansion from the perispirit, from the physical body, it is still the sole owner of that physical body. There is no replacement. If that is a completely dislocation of the perisphere, separation of the perisphere from the physical body, that establishes what we call death. Physical body will stop function, okay? And again, we like to use a mediumship meeting that is properly prepared for the activity, that the mediums feel comfortable that they can kind of allow all the spirits to use the physical body to express their thoughts, because they trust the environment, they trust the protection of the ambient. They allow the spirits to imprint its will upon the physical body, to verbalize their thoughts or to write their thoughts. Okay? But the medium is always in control. It should be always in control when the thing is done properly. And that's another note that I think is important to add here, why in spiritism, okay, that does not own mediumship, we suggest the mediumship to be performed in a proper environment, with rare exceptions. There is always exceptions to the rules, right? Amongst individuals with the same degree of elevation of thoughts, creating the right atmosphere for the phenomenon to take place, for protection of the spirit of the medium, to avoid problems of mediums kind of losing control of that communication, of control of its own body, and the spirits taking an excessive control of that physical body and doing things that should not be done, or saying things that should not be written. We always say in our mediumship meetings that the spirit can and should express all 100% of its thought, all of its hate, all of its anger, all of its disgust over of the work that we do, and everything else at 100%. But we use words that appropriate to the ambient. We will not be cursing. With it can express all of its violence without being violent, without using the medium's arms and hands and legs to kick and to do things, right? To express their thoughts, of violence, of anger, of hate, of everything else, is exactly what we want from the spirit, if that's what the spirits came for. But we will not use the physical body to commit any act of violence, any act of hate, anything like that, and you use words that is appropriate to the ambient. That is responsibility of the medium to do it. And that's important to note over here. This fact, this note of Kardec is very important. Even if mechanical medium, even if it is in a state of a very altered state of consciousness, it's still responsible for that communication, still responsible to maintain the integrity of the value of the medium, of the mediumship meeting. And that's why you suggest in spiritism, mediumship with Jesus. Okay, so this is a very important thing over here. So we spoke about this transmission of thought coming from myself spirit, passing it to the physical brain, that the physical brain will do its biochemical electrical mechanism and will verbalize or write it. In the case of mechanical medium, you bypass the part that does the intellectual, the cognitive work of receiving those thoughts and passing through the hands or to the vocal cords. The mechanical medium goes straight to the mechanical part of the communication or going to the part of the brain that does the commands the hands do the writing, right? In the case of what Kardec called the intuitive medium or unconscious of conscious medium, I prefer the word conscious medium. The spirit is the medium is conscious of what he or she is receiving the thought. So the comparison here, the role of mechanical mirror is that of a machine who receives the thought and put the thought without doing the work of thinking of it him or herself. And whereas the intuitive or the conscious medium act as an interpreter. So now here, the two perispirits of the medium in a state of trance and the perispirit interact. The spirit passes its thoughts to the perispirit of the medium. The medium receives those thoughts in his or her own brain. It goes in the cognitive part of the brain that does an interpretation of those thoughts. And from there, it does pretty much as what I'm doing now, pick up those thoughts and send to the part of the brain that is responsible for the mechanical movements of the hands, and you write those thoughts. So here it receives the thought, it thinks of it, analyzes it, interprets it, and write it down. The more evolved, the more developed, the better medium will put those thoughts with the minimum amount of interference of his or her own prejudices and things like that. If I receive a communication of an spirit and I'm intuitive medium of a conscious medium, and that spirit is saying things that I absolutely disagree 100%, saying things that I consider to be, I don't know, hateful, thoughts of prejudices. It's I have to be a very well educated medium to put those words down without allowing my personal um, likings and dislikes, agreeing or disagreeing with what the Spirit saying, and put it on those words as the thoughts that I receive, which makes the work of the mediums a little bit more complex over here because the medium really has to be prepared to do those kind of things. And we can see that in our mediumship meetings when we receive uh, suffering spirit and tremendous degree of suffering, moral difficulties, anger, prejudices, desire for retaliations, and be as honest as possible, transmitting the thoughts of the spirit. It requires a degree of education that is done through what we are doing here and practice, of course. And again, always in a proper environment, surrounded by those who have experience on the field, with rare exceptions, of course. Is there any question here? Okay, so just to further explain this, Zoom and I have come out with an idea that I think explains pretty well what the difference between these two kinds of mediumship. Let's assume that I have a problem with my computer right now and I cannot able to perform the functions that the computer should be able to perform, and I'm not able to resolve the problem myself. So I call the company, I call the Verizon, at work I call the IT person, and that IT person will help me to resolve the problem. So in this case, we can say that IT person, the Verizon person, is the spirit. I am the medium, and the keyboard is my hand. Okay? So I call them, and they say, okay, I'm going to help you to resolve the problem. I want you to do this. I want you to press that key for 3 seconds. And then I wanted to write those 3 words, and then you're going to press the cap lock and the shift keys at the same time. I am a intuitive or a conscious medium. What do? I receive those thoughts, I interpret those thoughts, and I repeat to myself basically, oh, the guy's telling me to do A, B, C, and D. And I go and do exactly what he's telling. I go to the keyboard and I do that. And then in the screen, it shows exactly what I'm using the keyboard and things over there. So I'm receiving what the guy is telling me to do, analyzing, interpreting, and then doing the mechanical work of putting those thoughts from the IT person, the Verizon person, and acting upon it. But I do the interpretation, the analysis as the medium, and I use the keyboard to put those thoughts to work. Is that clear? And then another case that the guy is telling me to do like this, but I don't understand computer. I'm really poor with those things. I cannot. When he says press the D's and do the F5 and F7 at the same time, I got all confused and I got everything wrong. And the guy loses patience with me and says, "Let's do this. Do you give him permission to use your system without you participating on the phenomenon, on the process? I am the owner of the system. I am the responsible for the system. I will trust and I trust this guy. And I say, yeah, okay, I trust you. And then I take my hands off completely. And I give the consent for the IT person, the Verizon person, and things start happening on the screen besides my will, besides my hand. And a bunch of letters and signals and things happens over there, but in a few minutes, problem resolved without my participation. There I am the unconscious medium, the mechanical medium. It, the IT person used my system, did whatever it did, put a bunch of words, a bunch of things on the screen and resolve the problem. Besides my cognitive participation in the process. Does it make sense? The difference between mechanical and intuitive or conscious and unconscious medium?
The the good example of the mechanical is that you can stop the remote guy to work on your computer at any time. You know, if you see the guy there putting on a bunch of words and suddenly the guy goes into a suspicious website, you can interrupt him, right? That's the same thing with the medium.
Yeah, and in any kind of mediumship.
Yeah.
Again, it's very important. The medium must be in control. That's your system. It belongs to you. You're responsible for it. Even being a completely unconscious medium. Even if the guy start putting things over there, say, hey, stop. I don't like that. he needs to respect that. You can make it stop because the system is yours, belong to you. That's a very important thing. And there's a Kardec make that point over there. Okay, everybody understand that? Now, as I said, there is always a degree of everything. Everything seems to follow a scale, right? That goes from minimum intensive to mostly intensive. So the spirit can be, a medium can be fully unconscious and is still responsible for the communication. That is a hard thing for me to explain, um, for me to understand, of course. To a fully conscious, being completely aware, 100% of what the thoughts is receiving, integrating those thoughts completely in his own brain, the cognition part of the brain that analyzes, interprets before sending to the part of the brain that deals with the mechanical writing, right? And from this absolutely spectrum of being fully unconscious and fully conscious, there is degrees of intensity. And somewhere at the medium point, you're going to have the semi-mechanical mediums, the ones that is a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And with various degree of intensity, and this very degree of intensity may varies from communication to communication with the same spirit. Because again, we are dealing here not with exactly science. We are not dealing here with mathematics. We are dealing here with minds, with with two different minds, so one of the spirit, one of the medium, and those minds are different. We all have again our prejudices, our knowledges, our understandings. So it's never a 100% the same every time. Okay, there's many variables, and that's very important. And between being fully conscious or fully unconscious, there are those who are kind of halfway. Okay, that's what Kardec will call here the semi-mechanical mediums. Any questions? Okay, Sarayda, please.
Yes, semi-mechanical mediums, 181. In the case of purely mechanical mediums, the movement of the hand is independent of their will, while with intuitive mediums, the movement is voluntary and facultative. Semi-mechanical mediums, on the other hand, are a blend of both. That is, they feel their hand being moved without their willing it to do so, but at the same time, they are aware of what is being written while the words are being formed. With the first, the medium's thought appears after the writing. With the second, before the writing. With the third, while the writing is in process. Semi-mechanical mediums are the most numerous.
Rogério, does that kind of is pretty much what you told us of yourself?
To the teeth, yes.
You did, right? I thought so.
Like I just needed to wait.
Kardec read your mind.
Exactly.
And important here, semi-mechanical means are the most numerous. Okay. And again, I mean, I keep stressing, repetitive, I'm sorry to say, but I think it's important that we're not dealing here with exact science. Okay. And there is tremendous degree of variation for many different variables. But most of mediums will be a little bit of the same mechanical. All of them, and that's again being repetitive, the medium is responsible for the physical body, for what the physical body is doing, regardless of the type of medium he or she is. Okay? And I can stress enough and again being repetitive. This kind of phenomena should be done at the right place, in the right environment, surrounded by the right people to avoid problems. With rare exceptions, okay? I know somebody gets, but Chico Xavier wrote by himself during this break of his work. Well, there is how many Chico Xaviers out there, okay? And there are those who are able to do it, who have reached the potential of doing without getting themselves in trouble. But outside that, we're always taking risks. And we here seeks to educate and prevent any kind of problem to the best that we can do it. Okay, so we strongly suggest to avoid the phenomena by oneself inside your room and playing with things that are not toy, they're not used to be, it's not meant to be a toy. Mediumship is something serious that has to be educated, has to be studied, and has to be done in the right, proper place.
I think it's important here to reinforce the concept of a proper place, proper environment. There is a movement out there, some people spreading teachings, and even there is a book or something like that that addresses the issue of doing mediumship meetings online. According to what we learn from Kardec, according to what we learn from the serious mediums, students and teachers of mediumship, it is very dangerous to have an online mediumship meeting. The risks for the medium, isolated in his or her home by herself or himself, without the proper protection of the environment. If you live alone, suddenly you are in the middle of a communication, your internet drops, your light, you lose power. What happens? You are completely exposed to the spirits, and of course the spirits that are brought to the spiritist center with the mediums and with the participants are in a protected environment, are safe, and work in a safe environment. When you are at home by yourself, or maybe you have a family, so you are exposing your family to the risks of what you are doing. So it's very important to reinforce that even if you see people that talking about it in videos and in texts, it is not recommended according to serious spiritists and according to what we learn and experience from the teachings of Kardec.
Yes, and that's extremely important to keep remind ourselves and everyone of that, and it's our duty as students here doing a study group in which no one here is no really more than anyone else, but to put the minds together and to reason that this doctrine was put together by the Spirit of Truth, was codified by a highly educated, evolved spirit as Allan Kardec. If anyone is going to deviate from what's being brought to us by the Spirit of Truth, by the higher spirits, by the extremely evolved spirits as Allan Kardec, it would have to be by someone that is even above those to make modification, to make changes of what the doctrine is teaching us. Anyone can do whatever they want to do. We're not telling here what to do or not to do because we have free will and we act in accordance to our conscience. But it's our duty to try to educate people to use it, this wonderful phenomenon of mediumship, in a way that is safe and is productive. Being productive is important. What is the goal of mediumship? In accordance to Erastus, in the same book, Erastus is one of the spirits of make the glab of the spirits of truth, the response for the mediumship. It says the goal of the mediumship, in accordance to what they bring to us here, is to educate humankind morally, not even intellectually, morally. So anything that goes different from that, it's not really a part of the work of the Spirit of Truth. It's not really a part of the codification of Allan Kardec. Do we need, in order to conquer those moral values, to have an understanding of intellectual things? Yes. So there is the science of spiritism that teaches what we are doing over here now, understand this mechanism of communication between the two planes of our existence. Anyone can do whatever they want to do, of course. We cannot tell people what to do, but you seek to educate people to stick to the precepts that brought to us by the spirits of truth, by Jesus Christ, and codified by well prepared for this mission, being Allan Kardec. It's beyond me to try to understand why people deviate from those two, the spirit of truth and Allan Kardec. If it's not only for personal gains, and these personal gains may be profitable material gains or just vanity or just putting their names in some kind of book or something. But you need to be very suspicious of anything that deviates from what's being thought of it here. And there are things that is immutable, and truth is immutable, and those spirits bring the truth. So be very, very careful of all the variations or all the simplifications of the books of the codification, of rewriting of the books of the codification. That's why personally, I think translations of those things is a very important work that has to be done by very well prepared individuals and not avoid anything that shows any alteration whatsoever from the originals, to avoid being trapped by those selfish, prideful individuals who have different goals and objectives than use the doctrine as an instrument to upgrade ourselves, individual and collective, morally. And it's going to happen. The more the doctrine expands, there will be the false prophets out there. There will be the wolves dressed in sheep clothes. And if we don't educate ourselves, we become prey to them. That's why it's important to stick with the books of codification, do what we are doing here. Study those books to protect ourselves and to protect the doctrine itself. Okay. Now let's continue. If there is any question, let's continue with inspired mediums.
Inspired mediums. 182. All those who either in a normal or an ecstatic state receive mental communications that are foreign to their own preconceived ideas may be considered to be inspired mediums. They may be regarded as an intuitive variety, but with the difference that the intervention of a concealed power is much less detectable. For with an inspired medium, it is more difficult to distinguish between the inspired thought itself and the medium's own thought. What characterizes the former is especially spontaneity. We may receive inspiration from spirits who influence us, either for the good or evil, but it is mainly the help of those who want what is good for us, whose counsels we most often fail to follow. This applies to all the circumstances of our life. In the decisions we must make, in this sense, we could say that all mediums, since there are none who do not have their protector and familiar spirits, who do everything they can to transmit good thoughts to their wards. Everyone if everyone were convinced of this truth, they would more frequently draw upon the inspiration of their guardian angel in moments when they do not know what to say or to do. Let us fervently and confidently evoke our protective spirit in times of need, and we will more assiduously wonder at the ideas that arise as if by magic, whether for help in making a decision or something to be done. If no idea arises immediately, then all we must do is wait. The proof that we are dealing with suggested ideas is precisely in that, if it were our own, it would always have been at our disposal, and there would have been no reason for it not to have manifested at our beck and call. Those who are not blind only need to open their eyes whenever they want to see. In the same way, those who have their own ideas, their own ideas always have them at their disposal. But if they do not surface when they want them, it is because they must go in search of them outside themselves. In this category, we may also include persons who, without being gifted with exceptional intelligence and without leaving their normal state, have flashes of intellectual lucidity that endows them with surprising ease of conception and elocution. In certain cases, a presentiment about the future. And at such times, which we rightly call inspirational, ideas abound and follow upon one another in an involuntary and almost feverish impulse. It seems like a higher intelligence has come to our aid and that our spirit has been freed of a great burden.
Can you continue, please?
Okay. All geniuses, artists, scholars, and literary are undoubtedly advanced spirits with the ability to comprehend and conceive of great things. It is precisely because spirits judge them as possessing such abilities that, whenever they want to accomplish certain deeds, they suggest the necessary ideas to them. It is thus that in most instances they are mediums without realizing it. Nevertheless, they have a vague intuition of being assisted. For those who appear for inspiration actually make an invocation. If they expected not to be heard, they often exclaim, "My guardian angel, help me." The following responses confirm this assertion. What is primary cause of inspiration? Mental communication from a spirit. 2. Is inspiration only meant for great revelations? No. It is almost always meant for the most common life circumstances. For example, you want to go somewhere and a secret voice tells you not to because you would meet with danger, or this voice suggests that you do something that you had not thought of. This is inspiration. There are very few people who have not been inspired on many occasions. Number 3, in moments of inspiration, can writers, painters, or musicians, for example, be regarded as mediums? Yes, because in such moments their soul is freer and more separate from matter, and thus it recovers part of its faculties as a spirit and more easily receives communications from other spirits who inspire it.
Thank you, Sir Adam.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't know if you go to the dictionary, it will be what I'm saying here, but we'll say that intuition is something that comes from oneself, and inspiration is something that comes from a third party. So in a prayer, we ask to be inspired. So we ask to receive thoughts from a third party, right? And of course, in this case, when we pray to receive inspiration from higher order spirits, our guardian angel, and things like that, right? Kardec tells us that we are all mediums. None of us are able to perform phenomena such as psychography, psychophonies, and physical phenomena. But Kardec says that in a certain degree we are all mediums because we all can interact with the spiritual world. We can all of us can be inspired or receive thoughts from a third parties, right? So in a sense we are all mediums. So when it comes to the inspired mediums here, Kardec's talking about us. Now, as I said in the beginning, in order to call something a mediumistic phenomenon, there must be some kind of trance of the individual in a very minimal outer state of consciousness or more deep outer state of consciousness. And Kardec starts here for those who are either in a mono or ecstatic state receive mental communications. We could say that in a prayer we place ourselves in a trance, in an altered state of consciousness, and when we elevate ourselves so highly that we expand our spirit and is able to receive inspiration or receive thoughts from a third party, from someone else. It may be very minimum. So minimum that it's very hard to maintain that concentration, that state of trance for a prolonged time. That's why we suggest that the prayers should be short, concise, but with as much depth as possible. Okay, when someone is doing the prayer and we are sitting over there and we started with a high degree of concentration and that altered state of consciousness. But if the prayer goes too long, we start to lose it. And if the prayer continues, say, "Poxa, can this guy finish already?" I mean, we are gone. They already lost us a long time. We cannot even maintain ourselves there that long because it requires that altered state of consciousness. The more trained, the more prepared, the individual that can stay longer and longer and longer and longer in that altered state of consciousness. There was people to practice meditation, peoples of different cultures, are able to do that better than us, right? I mean, our Eurocentric culture, we disregard this ability very, very much. So it's harder for us. It's much easier for individual cultures, from the Hinduists, from the Hindus, that train themselves since childhood to practice those things. They can stay longer in that outer state of consciousness, right? For us, it's a little bit more difficult. But there is that minimum, when you go into, let's say, to write an essay for work or just to write something that I'm going to write editorial to the New York Times or whatever. Very often we put ourselves in a minimal state of consciousness that we find ourselves looking up to the sky and say, some thought come to my mind to put in this piece of paper. So, who are we asking to? What are we doing there if not opening ourselves to receive that inspiration? Believer or non-believer? right? It doesn't really matter. The belief here doesn't really matter, of course. With the belief, it augments the potential to be receptive to those things, right? But everybody can be inspired. And when Kardec puts over here, inspired mediums, pretty much talking about us, okay? Now the thing is, we can be inspired by many sources of spirits. When Kardec asks if you are influenced by the spirits, by spirits, the spirits ask that more than can possibly imagine, so much so that we can say that they are the one who runs your lives. We are surrounded by a multitude of witnesses, as Paul of Tarsus tells us. So we are continuously being bombarded by energies that we can go thoughts from spirits. And not all of them are good. Not all of them are evil. We will connect through affinity in accordance to our intentions, to our state of mind, good or evil, right? But it's very important that if everyone were convinced of this truth, that we are all mediums, that we can all of us can receive thoughts from all kinds of spirit. So if we're all convinced of this truth, they would more frequently draw upon the inspiration of the guardian angels in moments when they do not know what to say or do. If we are aware of this phenomenon that happens, we are surrounded by a multitude of witnesses that we can receive thoughts of good, bad spirits. Why don't we more often open ourselves to receive the inspiration of a guardian angel who is there for this? Assume the hard mission God would help them to guide us. If we let them, if you open ourselves to them, they cannot infringe on our free will. But if we, using our free will, our conscience, open ourselves to them, especially the moments in which we don't know what to say or what to do, we can receive the inspiration to guide us on what to say, what to do. Let us fervently and confidently evoke our protective spirit in times of need, and we will more assiduously wonder at the ideas that arise as if by magic, whether for help in making a decision or in something to be done. If no idea arises immediately, then all you must do is wait. That is a big problem, especially these days that we live this era of instantaneous gratification. We want everything for yesterday, right? Have the patience. Open yourself to the good spirits in a state of meditation, that minimum altered state of consciousness. Ask your spiritual guide to help you in that decision making, in that direction to take. If you don't receive immediately, be patient. Because they want to do what's best for us. And sometimes what's best for us is to be patient. It takes some time, right? Now, we are all mediums. We all can receive guidance, inspiration from a third party. And of course, that would include, since we are all mediums, include the geniuses, the artists, the scholars, the literate, okay? And they are, Kardec says, advanced the spirit. Let's say a little more advanced in some specific fields of expertise than most of us, right? The the scholar is definitely more advanced and in the field of science that he or she works on, you know. The artist who paints, you know, it's better than average at expressing the beauty in a canvas. Hopefully the beauty, because we see some things over there that does not translate in my eyes to beauty also, right? But yeah, if all of us are mediums at some point, so that includes the geniuses, the artists, the scholars, the literati, and undoubtedly they have that advantage. And because they have that higher degree of advancement in specific fields of sciences, of social and physical science, they will be in tune with spirits of the same advancement, and they'll be more able to not only receive that inspiration but apply them. Because let's imagine that Renoir or Picasso would inspire me to put their thoughts in a canvas. Well, but tremendous waste of their time because they don't have that ability. So the Renoir, the great painters, if they want to use their ability to inspire individuals to put their thoughts in a canvas, they would select individuals who have better ability to doing that than I. Makes completely sense, right? And they have to do their work. Again, it's 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration, right? They will inspire us, they will offer what they can to us, but we need to do our work as well. They are medium without realizing it. No. Again, all of us are medium without realizing it. And Kardec asked the spirits to help with some of those questions. And the questions are the following. The response confirms this assertion. What's the primary cause of inspiration? Mental communication from the spirit. Again, when you have to write an essay, you want to write a letter to the, I don't know, to the politician representative of your community, and you put your hands on the pencil and don't really quite know what to write, and you take that moment and you concentrate, and then things start happening and ideas start coming. You say, what is it coming from? I didn't have it myself, and now I have it. Well, the spirits have no problem saying, no desperation, mental communication from the spirit. Receive that help. Well, you have the idea of look up in the sky as if you're asking, please help me, and then the help comes. For others, it's impossible to accept there is a third party helping you out, but for us, it should be common sense that you're being inspired. Is inspiration only meant for great revelations? Much to the contrary. No. Inspiration is for most of the time for our common life circumstances. It's not for the exceptions, it's mostly for the average. Does it happen the exception as well? Yes, of course it does. But it's not really only for the exception, only for the great events. It's for the calm day in life. It's the time that you're talking to your, trying to educate your sons and daughters, and they say something that's so disagreeable. The truth is so disagreeable with common sense that you feel like exploding. And then something say, oh, calm down, and that's not gonna help. Slow down. And you have that no. You allow yourself to lower yourself and perhaps even be silent. And sometimes silence is the best answer. Then you take that break. Inspiration comes the common day of life. Your boss is giving you a hard time someday at work, and you say, I'm gonna quit this job. I can't take this guy anymore. And then somebody says, cool off, man. This salary is very important for you right now. That guy is having a bad day. Take it easy. And you do take it easy. Where does it come from? Or we were able to redirect your energy, shift it. No, 306%, 180, I'm sorry, 108. 180 so drastically. You received mental communication from the spirits. Because an angel, you protect the spirits, is there for it. If you are only most of the time able to be open to them, right? In the moment of inspiration, can write, painters, musicians, or as empiric guidance mediums. You already said all of us are mediums at a certain degree, right? Now, at the moment that I put myself to write or to paint or to write up music, I'm placing myself on a minimum degree of expansion of that perispirit that makes me more likely to be receptive to the third party thoughts that we're going to call inspiration to come to us. So yes, because in such moments their soul is freer and more separate from matter, and therefore more likely to be receptive to those thoughts. And since at that moment, my concentration, my intention, my idea is directed towards music, let's say, I will be associating myself through harmony uh, with spirits who also are thinking of music or deal with music. And of course, it's good for all events, for writing, for painting, for a surgeon on operating at that moment that sees a variation of the anatomy and say, oh, I need a minute to think here. How to better go around this vessel that it's different from the normal anatomy. And we see an inspiration over there because you are putting yourself receptive to that inspiration. It can happen in every field of our existence. And again, for most of the time, for the common event of our lives. And being in the surgery room, dealing with surgery is a common event for the surgeon, not for us. And will not that surgeon receive inspiration over there to guide, to assist that individual? Yes, of course. Okay. We went over a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, sorry. Next week we continue with prescient meetings with us. Thought I was gonna finish this today. Any comments, Ron? I'm sorry, guys, went over a few minutes.
Next week is Q&A. And Sunday we do Q&A.
Okay. All right. So, Carol, can you do the final prayer, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Amo. Excellent presentations and very inspiring work today. Thank you, John, as well. And also Sarita for reading for us today and for everyone who was here participating. We're grateful. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's book, Chapter 15, regarding writing mediums. The thoughts and messages from a spirit can be transmitted through a medium and expressed through writing or a psychography. There are unconscious mediums, intuitive mediums, and the most common are semi-conscious mediums. The perispirits of the medium and a spirit connect at the appropriate level, and that is required for a communication to occur. Bioelectrical and chemical systems are activated, which is a complicated organic process in mediumship. An educated medium is a soul and does not relinquish the physical body and is in control, responsible, and receives communication, hopefully in a protected environment and ambient. We are grateful to the Spirit of Truth, the Spiritist teachings, and also for inspired mediumship as well. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. Pardon me. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.